Hi class, this is Dr. Marianwar from Physiology. Hope you guys are fine during this pandemic. Okay, my topic today is about the diabetes. I'm switching on the subtitles, but keep in mind that these subtitles are self-generated, so it might have be having some errors because it is automatically generated by the computer. So if there is an ambiguity, I want you guys to keep your minds open and concentrate on this text and my voice. Okay, here we go. Well, you guys are well aware about the diabetes because it is quite a common disorders. By definition, diabetes mellitus is a group of metabolic disorders, and there are two main criteria which basically determine their diabetes. One, there is malfunctioning in your insulin secretions, and number two, there is problem with your insulin action, which is usually your insulin resistance. uh, Having a global overview, you guys will be surprised to know that 422 million adults have the diabetes worldwide. Again, there is a presentation about the WHO. It gives some shocking results and it says that every 7 seconds, one person loses his life due to diabetes, and almost 5 million people they die due to diabetes. You can have it in another way that one in every 12 person is basically a patient of diabetes. So you guys can have the idea this is a quite common disorder globally. Basically, if you characterize the chronic disorder from 1 to 10, then this is among the top 10. Okay, as you, I can't give you 1 minute break in a 1 hour lecture. So this is Woody and this is Buzz Lightyear, and they're talking about the prevalence of the diabetes. We move to the summary of blood glucose regulation. You guys have already studied the summary of the blood glucose regulation from the lectures by Dr. Razia. So I just give you an overview of this summary. As you can see, the fasting blood level of your glucose, they are usually 80 to 90 ideally, or they can be up to the 100. But if they move beyond the 100 mg per deciliter, then you are in pre-diabetic conditions. So your fasting blood glucose level should not be more than 100 mg per deciliter, or ideally they should stay at 90. Then your random blood sugar, the random blood sugar should be around 120 to 125. If it is more than 125 mg per deciliter, then you would be having pre-diabetes. But if you're having it more than 140 mg per deciliter, then you are having full-blown diabetes. So these are your levels. So the blood glucose is normally maintained and regulated by a number of factors. Number one is the liver. You know, the liver is involved in glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, and all the carb metabolism. So if there is any problem or any chronic anomaly or abnormality which is involving the liver, so obviously it will affect your glucose regulation. Second, you are well aware your insulin and glucagon hormone, because of the positive and negative feedbacks of these hormones, your carb levels are maintained to this point in the fasting and to this point in the random. The third point is the your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system, when it gets activated, it activates your all the sympathetic responses, the energy production responses. So obviously it causes utilizes the glucose and it causes the hypoglycemia. At fourth point, you can see there are some other hormones. Here I have only mentioned two, growth hormone and cortisol. Why I have mentioned these two hormones? Because abnormalities of these hormonal secretion can lead to the diabetes. There are some other hormones too, is for example thyroid. It is also involved with your carb metabolism, but its abnormality does not always lead to the diabetes, because in thyroid over or under secretion there is no phenomena like insulin resistance. But in this case, in the case of growth hormone and cortisol, they can lead to the insulin resistance. Okay, this is a kind of a fun fact. If you have seen a lot of diabetics who keep on drinking soda, who keep on taking junk burger and pizza, and they can say, okay, your the pancreas are lazy, but keep in mind, if you're having a diabetes, then you are definitely ill. Yes, your pancreas are lazy, either they are not producing sufficient insulin, or if the insulin is producing normally, then there is some other problems, for example insulin resistance. Next, we move to the classification of diabetes. You are well aware with these two classifications, and then later on I will mention the third one. First one is the type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, you also call it insulin dependent diabetes or juvenile diabetes. It usually occurs before the age of 40. And the second classification type is the type 2 diabetes. It is non-insulin dependent, and you can also call it adult onset diabetes. Third one, it is a combination of different type of disorders which are not coming under the classification of 1 and 2. So third one is the secondary diabetes. So I will explain the causes of each and every type one by one. So first we see the causes of type 1 diabetes. Number one is the viral infections. There are a number of viruses which can lead to the diabetes. For example, retrovirus or cytomegalovirus, it can lead to the diabetes. Second is the autoimmune disorders. You are well aware with the phenomena of autoimmunity. You have studied it in the blood physiology. In autoimmune disorders, your own immune system attacks your own cells, and in this case these are the cells of your pancreas. So if your cells of pancreas are destroyed, it means you are not producing sufficient insulin, so it will lead to the type 1 diabetes. Third one is the injury. It can be inflammatory injury or some other physical or mechanical injury. So whatever the cause of the injury is, if it is affecting your pancreas, it will lead to the type 1 diabetes. Then the fourth one, which is usually major cause in our community, it is the heredity tendency. If among your parents or your grandparents they are having type 1 diabetes, then the children, they are more prone to develop type 1 diabetes. Okay, now we move to the causes of type 2 diabetes. Keep in mind that type 2 diabetes is basically preceded by a syndrome we call as metabolic syndrome or syndrome X. So first the person developed metabolic syndrome, and then it moves to the type 2 diabetes. The type 2 diabetes is more related to our lifestyle. For example, the people who are having sedentary lifestyle, who are obese, or especially if they are having comorbid obesity, then you keep in mind whole obesity and especially central obesity. Central obesity leads to your insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, I explained it after in the second point. Insulin resistance and the obesity, they lead to the metabolic syndromes, and then this metabolic syndrome, it can lead to the full blown type 2 diabetes. What happens in an obesity, it leads to insulin resistance in a way that there are less insulin receptors, or you can say there is down regulations of the insulin receptors on all of your effector organ, including fat cells and muscle cells. and there is impaired signaling pathways. So if the insulin signaling pathway is impaired, your body will not respond to the insulin. Insulin is there in the blood, your pancreas are normal, they are producing insulin, but your cells, for example your fat cells or your muscle cells, as they cannot respond to that insulin, so it will lead to the phenomena which is known as insulin resistance. So what happens in that, it will lead to the fasting hyperglycemia. Now keep in mind from our previous discussion, your glucose level should not be more than 100 mg per deciliter even during the fasting. So what happens in the type 2 diabetes and also in the type 1 diabetes, in the fasting state patient also, he is having hyperglycemia. Then there are some lipid abnormalities like HDL, which are the good lipids, their levels are decreased, but the triglycerides and VLDL and LDL, they are increased. So whenever it is happening, you're having more cholesterol in your body, you're having atheroma or vessel damage, it will lead to the atherosclerosis, and atherosclerosis will eventually lead to the hypertension. Okay, about the secondary cause. Up till now we have studied type 1 causes, type 2 causes. Now we move to the secondary diabetes, or the causes other than type 1 and type 2. These are again heredity tendency. If the parents are having some kind of autonomic disorders like celiac diseases or some other autonomic disorders or some other disorders or chronic disorders which are related to your pancreatic dysfunctions, then this heredity tendency can be passed to their next generation, and person will be having secondary diabetes. The next type is the gestational diabetes. It occurs in the woman during the pregnancy, but it usually disappears after the pregnancy. Third one is the autoantibodies to insulin receptors. Now, previously in type 1 diabetes, we studied the autoimmunity against the pancreas. Now we are studying about the autoimmunity against the insulin receptors which are present on your affected cells, for example fat cells or muscle cells. So when antibodies are formed against those insulin receptors, though insulin is there in the blood, but as receptors are malfunctioning, so they won't respond to that insulin. Third is the mutation of insulin receptors. Mutation occurs through a number of ways, for example chemotherapy, radiotherapy, some drugs, or some viral infections. It can be any cause. So if there is a mutation of insulin receptor, it will lead to the development of secondary diabetes. Next is the polycystic ovary disease. This is characterized by formation of multiple cysts in the ovaries of the female. So it leads to the imbalance of the female sex hormones. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of hormones which are involved in the carb metabolism. So if their our metabolism is affected, or if their negative and positive feedback is not maintained to a normal regulated level, then obviously it will affect your carbs metabolism, and eventually it will affect your uh, obviously glucose status in the blood during fasting and during your random state. So it will lead to the secondary diabetes. Next one is the Cushing syndrome. You guys have studied in detail. And the last one is the acromegaly due to the increased growth hormone. So these are all the causes of secondary diabetes. Last one is the pancreatitis. It can be acute and chronic. If there is inflammatory destruction, or if there is inflammation in your pancreas, obviously it won't work up to mark, so it will affect your insulin secretion. It will lead to the secondary diabetes. Now keep in mind, most of these conditions are reversible. For example, if you treat the cause in acromegaly, in Cushing syndrome, in polycystic ovary disease, in gestational diabetes, then you can reverse the secondary diabetes. But this is not true for some diseases like in heredity tendency. No, you cannot resolve it. You'll have to treat it, you'll have to give him insulin or some anti-diabetic drugs. but in some cases it can be reversed. Okay, now we move to sign and symptoms. Here you can see the sign and symptoms. Keep in mind they are general. I'm talking about all types of diabetes. They usually occur in each and every type or each and every classification of the diabetes. Number one is the frequent urination. Frequent urination, why does it occur? I give this mechanism in this way. Consider if there is hyperglycemia in the blood due to diabetes. Hyperglycemia means more sugar in your blood. When there is more sugar in your blood, the more sugar will release into your kidney in the form of tubular fluid. When there is more sugar in your urine, it will act as an osmotically active particle. So it will attract more water from your blood to your tubular fluid and eventually to your urine. So whenever someone is having uncontrolled diabetes, he will be having frequent urination. And whenever someone is having frequent urination, obviously the thirst center which is present in the hypothalamus, it gets activated, and the person will keep on drinking more and more water to compensate this frequent urination and the loss of the water which he lost, and it caused the dehydration. Okay, then there is hunger. Why there is hunger? Keep it that way. You're having lot of glucose in your blood, but your cells cannot take up that glucose. When your cells cannot take up that glucose, then obviously they give the signal to the brain that there is something wrong, they are not getting nutrition. Then the person keeps on eating more and more food. We call it polyphagia. The person is eating more food, he is producing more glucose, he is causing more hyperglycemia, but that glucose cannot enter into your cell. There obviously that person is having diabetes. Either it is due to the lack of insulin, or it is due to the faulty insulin receptor, or it is due to the insulin resistant. That glucose cannot enter into your cell. When that glucose cannot enter into your cell, person will keep on feeling hunger, his satiety center won't be activated, and he will be having polyphagia. So when your cells cannot take glucose, so the person obviously he will be weak, and the body, it also starts utilizing fat for energy and proteins for energy, because the main energy source, which is carbohydrate, is not available. So the person becoming weak, and he loses weight because he is using his muscle mass, and he is using his fat to form the energy. Blurred vision, it is due to the weakness. Then again, person will be having nausea. Nausea is not always there. It is not that the diabetic are always having nausea. Nausea occur either in hyperglycemic state or hypoglycemic state. Okay, then there are slow wound healing. Now keep in mind, whenever there is a diabetes, the person, he is not having very good source of energy, which is carbohydrate. So he is already having less energy in his body, so it means he cannot give energy to the tissues. When the tissues cannot get energy through the blood, so their healing would be slow. If whenever there is a cut or bruise, usually there is an abundant supply of blood to that area, which is having all the nutrition, or you can say it is having all the first aid kit in that blood. So he takes that blood, he takes the nutrition from that blood, and the wound is healed properly in on that specific time or in no time. But if the blood supply is poor, and even in that blood supply there are not good source of nutrition, so the person's wound healing will be slow. Then person is also will having tingling in his hand. It is due to the neuropathy. I will discuss about the symptoms of neuropathy later on in my lecture. These are again signs and symptoms of the diabetes. Here you can see polyuria or frequent urination, polydipsia, person keeps on drinking water, polyphagia because glucose cannot be taken up by the cell, Hyperglycemia, yes, because there is so much carbs or so much glucose in your blood due to the lack of insulin or due to the insulin resistance, that glucose cannot be utilized. So this glucose is released into your urine. This is called the glycosuria. And these are the fatal steps, basically these three. When your body cannot use glucose for the formation of energy, what does it do? It starts using fats to form the energy. Whenever it starts using fats to form the energy, it will lead to the formation of keto acids. You have studied the keto acids in the biochemistry. So when these keto acids are produced so much in the blood, we call this condition as ketosis. And as these are acids, so it leads to the ketoacidosis. Now we have discussed it in the discussion of CNS physiology in the synapses, that whenever there is acidosis, your synaptic transmission is slowed down. So when due to the ketoacidosis, your synaptic transmission is slowed down in the brain, it can lead to the coma. So these are the fatal effects of diabetes. Now the clinical presentation. Obviously the clinical presentation, first the person will be having those typical sign and symptom which I have just recently discussed. And other, when you will check his blood glucose level, if you check it in fasting state, it will be more than 100 in case of pre-diabetes, and it will be more than 120 mg per deciliter in case of the diabetes, or its random blood sugar will be more than 140, it can be 300, or it can be 1200 mg per deciliter. Then next clinical presentation is the glycosuria. When you will check the glucose level in his urine, he will be having glycosuria. Person will be having dehydration. Obviously when he will losing loss of water in his urine, that person will be having dehydration. So these are all the causes of the dehydrations. I have already discussed it previously, that severe cell dehydration leads to the osmotic pressure in extracellular fluid, and that the glucose particles, they act as osmotically active particle, and they attract the water from the blood, and it leads to the frequent urination, loss of water in the urine. And when there is loss of water in the urine, it eventually leads to the polydipsia or more water intake. Okay, another damaging effect of the diabetes in the long-term diabetics is the vascular damage. So how does this vascular damage occur? There are two proposed mechanisms. Number one, whenever there is hyperglycemia, these increased glucose level in your blood, they make your vessels more stiff and hard. Plus what do? They, all the fatty material which is present in the blood, it keeps on striking the blood walls again and again, and they start collecting at the sides of your blood walls. So they form atheroma, and then this atheroma is converted into the atherosclerosis. Whenever someone is having atherosclerosis, so it means the vessel wall is it has shrunk in its size, and can lead to the other damaging effect which I'll discuss later on. The other mechanism is the hyperglycemia. It increased fat promotes oxidative stress, the production of oxidative free radical, oxidative derived free radicals. They damage your blood vessels. So whenever there is a damage to the vessel, if its damage is in the microvessel, it will lead to the diabetic retinopathy. It means the blood supply of your retina will be disturbed. So person will complain about blurred vision or loss of vision eventually. Next is the diabetic nephropathy. If the vessels of your kidney, they are affected due to the damage of the diabetes, so that person's kidney function, it will start on decreasing up to the point that person can go into the renal failure. Now, the macrovascular damage, macrovessels mean large vessels. If there is a damage in the vessel of brain, it can lead to the stroke. If there is a damage in the vessel of heart, it can lead to the MI. Diabetic neuropathy. In diabetic neuropathy, your nerves are damaged basically. So there are two proposed mechanisms why these nerves are damaged due to the diabetes. Number one is hyperglycemia, and increased fat interferes with the nerves to send signals. When the nerves cannot send signals, it means they are not functioning properly. So the organ to which these nerves are supplying, that organ will be affected. Next, the vascular damage, which has occurred to the vessel, to that nerve, it interferes to the oxygen and nutrients of that nerve. When nerve is not getting nutrients and oxygen, obviously nerve will be damaged. So it can occur in both peripheral nerves and the autonomic nervous system nerves. In peripheral nerves, person can complain about loss of sense of vibration or loss of sensory sensations or the touch or pain, especially in extremities, in the lower limbs and the upper limbs. And in autonomic nervous system, if the nerves of autonomic system are affected, that patient can lose bladder control, his GI function like his digestion and his function of small and large intestine, they can be disturbed. So the person won't be able to digest the food, he can feel nauseous, he will be having vomiting or sometimes diarrhea or sometimes constipation. So these are all complications of diabetes. So whenever there is a diabetic neuropathy and vascular damage, it can lead to the poor blood supply to that area. For example, if that poor blood supply is to the foot, it can lead to the formation of these kind of wounds. As healing is not proper, so these wound won't heal, and the infection can keep on spreading up to a point where the doctor decide to actually amputate that limb or finger, or sometimes amputation can be up to the knee. So this is again a chronic effect of diabetes. uh, we have already discussed about the protein metabolism, as there is increased utilization and decreased storage of the glucose, and also the body cell cannot use glucose as energy, so body starts burning fat and muscles for the energy. Whenever body starts using fat and muscles for the energy, so person lose weight and he feels the lack of energy, we call asthenia. And despite of excess eating, person will still be underweight. Okay, this is an interesting point. As you know, as the body is now utilizing fats for energy and proteins too, so due to the utilization of the fats, more fats are utilized for the energy, more ketone bodies are produced. When more ketone bodies are produced, it leads to the acidosis. And when this acidosis is increased at acute level, we call it as diabetic acidosis. So here is the pattern of all this which I have just discussed. If you can see the insulin deficiency, sorry, here you can see insulin deficiency, it can lead to the decreased glucose uptake. Decreased glucose uptake leads to hyperglycemia, glycosuria, electrolyte depletion, and eventually dehydration and acidosis. When there is increased protein catabolism, it again leads to the increased plasma amino acid and nitrogen loss in the urine. They also act as the osmotic diuretics, and eventually it leads to dehydration and acidosis. Third point, it leads to the increased lipolysis, so more formation of ketogenesis or ketone bodies. Ketone body will, when they are released into the urine, we call it ketonuria. When they are more in the blood, we call it ketonemia. And again, they also cause dehydration, acidosis. And you know, in acidosis, your synaptic transmission is slowed down, so person can go into the coma and eventually death. So these are the acute manifestations of hyperglycemia. Now, how do you diagnose this patient? Obviously, you take his urinary glucose and then you check his fasting blood glucose level. If they are deranged, then the person is having diabetes. Now keep in mind, in type 1 diabetes the insulin levels are low, but in type 2 diabetes insulin level can be high if your pancreas are functioning normally and person is only having insulin resistance, or they can be low if their pancreas started burning out. Acetone breath is basically a breath due to the ketone bodies. When person is having acute hyperglycemic phase, then the ketone bodies they start dissipating in the during through respiration, through expiration basically. So that acetone can be breathed into that person's expiration air. Glucose tolerance test is considered as gold standard test. In this you give a bolus of the glucose to the patient. Normally you can see after 2 hours his glucose level returns back to the normal. But in the diabetic patient after 2 hours his glucose level are still at 200 mg per deciliter. So this is the glucose tolerance test which is gold standard. So what is the treatment? Keep in mind, in all kinds of diabetes the treatment usually aim at good healthy nutrition and exercise, and third one is the weight loss. Good nutrition, exercise and weight loss. In nutrition obviously we advise patient to avoid carbs and to eat more proteins. We ask patient to do exercise and monitor his blood glucose level. We educate the person about his daily habits that he should adapt to the healthy lifestyle. Then there are some drugs which can give to the patient, for example oral hypoglycemic drugs like sulfonylurea, thiazolidine, biguanidine. All these drugs they try to lower the level of glucose in your blood. Insulin, yes, type 1 diabetes patient they always need insulin, but in type 2 diabetes patient sometimes insulin is required and sometimes it is not required. There are different types of insulin therapy: rapid acting, short acting, intermediate and long acting. The doctor advised them according to the status of the patient. Then we have the combination of insulin which have 70-30. It is a combination of NPH and regular insulin. We can also monitor the glucose level of a person which gives a report of last 3 months of his glycemic control through the hemoglobin A1C. It gives the measures of blood glucose level over 2 to 3 months. Now these are the differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. As you know, type 1 diabetes it usually occurs before the age of 20, but type 2 diabetes greater than 30 or usually after 40. In type 1 diabetes usually patient is of low BMI, but type 2, as you know, the type 2 is preceded by metabolic syndrome and its characteristic feature is obesity, so they are usually obese. In the type 1 diabetes, as the problem is due to the loss of pancreas, or the pancreas cannot produce insulin, so insulin levels will be low. But in type 2 diabetes the problem usually lies in the insulin resistance, so insulin levels are usually normal or they can be higher in the initial stages. Glucagon, it tries to counteract the effect of the insulin in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. In both status its levels are high, but in type 1 diabetes it can be suppressed. Why? Because whenever you will give the insulin to that patient will respond. But in type 2 diabetes, when you give the insulin to the patients, their level will not be suppressed. Why? Because the insulin level are already so much high in his body, so even if you give him insulin injection it won't affect. Then plasma glucose insulin sensitivity, in this the sensitivity is normal, which means there is no insulin resistance, but in this sensitivity is reduced because there is insulin resistance. Type 1 therapy, in addition to exercise and dietary modification, yes, patient needs insulin, but in type 2 diabetes our main emphasis is on dietary modifications and his lifestyle modifications, and then there are some oral hypoglycemics, and if nothing works, then we advise insulin to that patient. I thought you guys might be bored. This is a diabetic ketoacidosis. This is a university question. Keep in mind, it keeps on appearing in exam again and again and again. What is a diabetic ketoacidosis? It is a serious diabetic complication. Keep in mind, every diabetic is not always in a state of diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis, it is basically a complication of the diabetes. Whenever your body produce more ketones, so it leads to this complication which we call as diabetic ketoacidosis. In this, there is not enough insulin in the body. Why there is not enough insulin? It can be due to some infection when body needs more insulin, so that insulin which was previously enough, now it is not enough. In case of some illness, that insulin which was previously enough is not enough now. Or a person is having some high carbohydrate meal, so that insulin which was previously enough in this body, now after this high carbohydrate meal, that insulin is not enough. What are the symptoms of diabetic ketoacidosis? Person will be having increased thirst, frequent urination, nausea, abdominal pain, weakness, fruity scented breath, or you can call it acetone breath, and confusion, and patient can eventually lead to the coma. So here you go. It usually occurs after 4 to 10 hours. After 4 to 10 hours of lack of insulin. Now, lack of insulin can be due to a high carbohydrate meal, or can be due to some infection or febrile illness or GI upset. So after this event, after 4 to 10 hours, patient will be having dehydration, and it leads to the hypotension, acidosis due to ketone bodies. His blood glucose level will be more than 240 mg per deciliter. Now this is the point, keep in mind, if its blood glucose level are more than this, then that person can be having diabetic ketoacidosis. Otherwise, it is just your elevation in his insulin level. He will be having polyuria, and he will be having hyperkalemia, because insulin is required to keep the potassium inside the cell. When there is less insulin, the potassium will come out from the cell into your bloodstream, and it will lead to the hyperkalemia. Now, how will you treat this patient? You will hydrate that patient, you will give him insulin, and you will do the electrolyte replacement, because you lost loss of electrolyte due to the frequent urination. And you also control his potassium level specifically, because you know, if the potassium levels are altered, that person might be having problems in his cardiac and muscular activity. This is again the flow chart. I want you guys to learn this flow chart, because it is not in the guidance, and this question is a university question. It shows that same description which I have just discussed about the diabetic ketoacidosis. Okay, contrary to the deficiency of insulin, it can be insulinoma or hyperinsulinism. It can be due to the adenoma, or a benign tumor of the islets of Langerhans, or it can be due to the increased insulin level. Patient can inject more insulin level by mistake into his body, or if there is severe hypoglycemia, obviously body responds in the formation of more insulin secretion, and whenever it happens, it leads to the hyperinsulinism. Now keep in mind, when there is so much insulin in your body, it will lead to the hypoglycemia, because more of the all of your glucose will enter into your cell, and in bloodstream there will be less glucose. Now, brain cannot utilize some other substances as energy sources. Brain only needs glucose. If there is no glucose for the brain, it will lead to the hypoglycemic shock, or you can also call it insulin shock. So what do? We immediately give large quantities of glucose to that patients, or we can give the IM or IV injection of glucagon to that patient. So this is the end of the lecture. Hope you guys understand. I'm sorry this is not an interactive section or the class, but still, if you guys are having any problems, you can ask me, you can email me, or you can text me on my phone. Thank you.